The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by demerarawaves.com.
The news comes to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories. With the news at this time, I am Tiana Jordan. A very good morning to you. First, the lead stories. Locally, the Guyana Elections Commission will possibly this Friday decide whether a Guyanese applicant or a Jamaican will become the next chief elections officer. Several health sector workers were charged with forging COVID vaccine cards. And in regional news, some nurses in Barbados have taken industrial action. The details of these and other stories will be coming up right here in just a moment.
Don't let the fear of contracting the coronavirus disease deter you from seeking the medical care you need. At Eureka Labs, we ensure the safety of our clients and staff with our rigid sanitization routine. This involves the use of ultraviolet lights to effectively rid the air and all surfaces of viruses and bacteria that may be present throughout the lab daily. The light works to rapidly inactivate microorganisms through a physical process that is invisible to human eye. So the next time you need a checkup, don't hesitate to give us a call on 225-7574 to schedule your appointment.
And now the news in detail. The Guyana Elections Commission has completed interviewing the two shortlisted candidates for the post of Chief Elections Officer. Opposition-nominated Elections Commissioner Vincent Alexander says the commission will meet again on Friday to possibly decide which of the two will be offered the job. He says the two, former GCOM Deputy Chief Elections Officer Vishnu Prasad and Jamaican former Regional Elections Officer Leslie Harrow have submitted hard copies of their curriculum vitae. Mr. Alexander says it is clear that Mr. Harrow understands Guyana's electoral system and was the better of the two in the job interviews. He says Mr. Prasad did not satisfactorily answer a number of questions. Mr. Alexander says Mr. Harrow is highly qualified in contrast to Mr. Prasad. Finance Minister Dr. Ashni Singh is urging Teleperformance Call Center to expand its operations in Guyana also. Delivering an address to mark the company's 5th anniversary observance, he welcomed Teleperformance's decision to expand to other Caribbean countries. At the same time, the finance minister wants the call center to spread its operations to other regions of Guyana.
Even as you consider your expansion in the Caribbean, I would urge you to consider with even greater urgency the expansion of your footprint in Guyana. I know that you're looking at a second location in Georgetown, I believe, but I want to say to you that we see the sector having a significant role to play far beyond Georgetown.
With 70% of Teleperformance's staff already working from home, the finance minister suggests that Teleperformance employs persons from small communities now that high-speed internet is increasingly becoming available to places like the Essequibo Coast and Berbice.
If you've perfected the work-from-home model as a means of delivery, then even in anticipation of the establishment of a physical presence in some regions of Guyana, you can in fact already start recruiting people in those regions. But what it allows you to do is to access hard-to-reach areas where perhaps the populations are relatively smaller. You might not necessarily set up an entire fancy office there, but there could very well be 20 persons there who you could employ who can work from home. And this allows you to create jobs in those areas.
Finance Minister Dr. Ashni Singh. Guyana this year exported more than 500,000 ounces of gold. President Irfan Ali made this announcement on Monday during an address to a faculty workshop on microeconomics of competitiveness at Harvard Business School of Harvard University.
Our country also is blessed with tremendous deposits of gold. Our volume of exports for 2021 is estimated at 500,000 ounces. In diamonds, for the period of January to September 2021, we exported approximately 20,000 metric carats. The estimate for October to December of this year is a further 7,500 metric carats.
It is not clear how much of the declared gold is produced in Guyana or smuggled from neighboring Venezuela and sold at a lower price due to the socio-economic problems in that neighboring Spanish-speaking nation. The United States had previously raised concerns about the smuggling of the precious yellow metal to prop up the Venezuelan government and possibly finance illicit activities in the Middle East and other parts of the world. The Guyana government is about to amend the Deeds Registry Act to make it harder to grant a power of attorney. When amended, both parties will have to appear before a notary public, either here or overseas, and they will have to provide several types of identification information. When passed by the National Assembly and signed into law by the President, a notary public or justice of the peace who is suspended, removed from practice, or not on the register performs such functions commits an offense. Further, anyone who certifies or propounds any false statement or document, or who fraudulently, with intent to deceive, conceals or withholds or perverts any fact or document pertaining to a power of attorney commits an offense, can be fined $5 million and imprisoned for 5 years. The amendment now requires the donor and the donee to each provide 2 photograph identification documents, identification card, valid passport, or driver's license that establish their identity. However, the proposed amendment states that if the donor of the power is out of the country and the donee is in Guyana, each would have to appear personally before a notary, public, magistrate, or justice of the peace in which he is and execute the power of attorney providing the identification documents. The law would also now require certified and sealed or stamped copies of the photograph identification documents and a separate witness statement where the donor executed the power outside of Guyana must be attached to the power of attorney and filed with the deeds registry. This would now be accepted as evidence in any suit, action, or other proceeding, states the explanatory memorandum. 3 health sector workers have been charged in connection with forged vaccination cards and were granted a total of $450,000 bail. The law enforcement agency said 32-year-old screening personnel Andel Valentine of Lot 2136 La Parfaite Harmony, West Bank, Demerara, and 29-year-old nurse Tanika Pollard of Lot 109 Golden Grove, East Bank, Demerara, were charged with forgery of document with intent to defraud the public. Magistrate Judy Latchman granted them $150,000 bail each when they appeared at the Diamond Magistrates Court. The accused were ordered to return to court on January 20, 2022. Police said they were arrested on Friday, December 3, 2021, by a party of police and charged with the offense that occurred between Monday, March 1, 2021, and Friday, December 3, 2021, at various vaccination centers on the east bank of Demerara. Also appearing before Magistrate Latchman was 21-year-old nurse Olivia Bonus. She was arrested on December 3rd and charged on December 7th with allegedly forging vaccination cards. She too was granted $150,000 bail and told to return to court on January 20th, 2022. And now in regional news. The Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB, Dr. Timothy Antoine, says the procurement and auditing systems need to be beefed up across the region in an effort to combat corruption. Participating in the Caribbean Conference on Corruption, Compliance and Cybercrime, he noted that the World Bank says that projects are 10 to 30% more expensive due to corruption. Against that background, he wants the procurement system across the Caribbean to be improved.
We have to modernize our procurement framework. That's a key area if we want to really improve integrity and transparency and accountability. And not just in the government, but also in the state-owned enterprises. In other words, any modern procurement framework must also cover the state-owned enterprises. The irony is that these enterprises were set up ostensibly to be more efficient than the central government. The reality in our region is that they are less efficient in many cases and even less transparent. That is unacceptable, and therefore they have to be covered under modern procurement frameworks.
The Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank also says key government ministries and agencies should have an internal audit system. He says the Ministries of Public Works, Health and Education, Police and Natural Resources must have internal audit functions.
These are not luxuries. These are necessities which would save considerable money but create a line of defense that would allow for high levels of compliance and, of course, address the issue of transparency and accountability.
He says the central government is relying on external audits that are often late and very deficient. Barbados's Senate has approved legislation that removes vending as a criminal offense. This report from Barbados Today.
The National Vending Bill got the nod of the island senators on Monday. During the debate in the upper chamber, Deputy President of the Senate, Senator Rudolph Grinnell, said it was a travesty that hundreds of black working-class people who were unjustly criminalized for vending are only now having their records cleared.
It is a pity that the amendment did not come at a time when the majority of those who were the victims would have been alive, those who were so embarrassed. It's a pity that we'll wait till poor Granny has gone to her grave to tell me now it is expunged. It's a travesty. Because right-thinking Barbadians, sir, now know that there is value to each and every honest job.
Independent Senator Julian Hunt wants vendors to embrace e-commerce. Speaking in the upper chamber in support of the National Vending Bill 2021, Hunt contended that this would augur well for the advancement of the sector, traditionally referred to as the informal economy.
I would like to see, as I have seen and experienced in parts of Africa and parts of Europe, where you can go to a vendor and the vendor equipped with some attachment on their phone facilitate electronic payment. It makes them less of a target for being robbed. It sets up a record that the banks can see that here is a business person, here is some tangible evidence of their income. It puts the vendor in a position where they can access credit and they can be thinking on a scale larger than the scale which they most likely have been thinking on up to this point.
He added that vendors ought to be encouraged to plan ahead by contributing to the National Insurance Scheme for their retirement.
That report from Barbados Today. Residents of the Bahamas are about to pay more for basic consumer items. This is because value-added tax, or VAT, is being increased. More in this report from the Bahamas' Eyewitness News.
Economic Affairs Minister Senator Michael Halkitis defending the anticipated increase of value-added tax on breadbasket items, saying it follows expert advice and best practices around the world. During his contribution in the Senate this morning, Halkitis says it is his government's belief that little to no exemptions are what's best for the country and the effectiveness of the tax system. Breadbasket items are currently zero rated for VAT. However, the government intends to introduce VAT on breadbasket items when VAT is reduced to 10%. Halkitis says that represents a saving across the board.
And so in order to take VAT off of those, VAT had to be increased on, for example, in the food stores. So my point in listing all of those, Mr. Deputy, is, Mr. Vice President, is that when you try to bring relief by exempting certain things, and then you have to raise the rate on other things, inevitably people are paying more for those things.
However, Senator Ruben Ramming says while he understands what the government is attempting to do, he still believes that adding VAT on breadbasket items will negatively impact the poorest among us.
I like the idea of it that there is something that can stay at its most basic minimum. So when the time comes that me or you, Mr. Vice President, ends up being, let's forget about the poor, let's be selfish. Me and you end up to that point that we can only buy corn. That's all I'm simply saying. So let's not disregard, Mr. Vice President, through you, the breadbasket item. Let's not disregard the medicines, because I know persons who have been calling me over and over, can't buy the insulin, can't buy the blood pressure medicine, can't pay for the heart medicine. And see, this is what we face, because we got to look forward to say count dollars and build a cost.
The Bahamas' opposition senator Ruben Ramming. That report from the Bahamas' Eyewitness News. The 24-year-old man accused of stabbing Deputy Commissioner of Police Albert Wade last week has been remanded to prison. Austin Isaac of Gray's Farm is charged with battery on police, being armed with an offensive weapon, and inflicting grievous bodily harm in relation to Wade. He is also said to have battered and assaulted a woman. Deputy Police Commissioner Wade was reportedly stabbed multiple times while he was attempting to separate the man and a woman who were apparently involved in a squabble. The police officer is said to have been attacked by the accused, who allegedly stabbed the senior police officer, in the head and both arms. He was treated and sent away. The prosecution objected to bail on a number of grounds, including that the injuries sustained by Wade could prove to be serious and may consequently result in the charges being elevated to indictable offenses. The magistrate obliged the prosecution's request and bail was denied. However, he indicated to Isaac that if he retains an attorney and wishes to make a bail application before his next hearing, he will be allowed to do so. Otherwise, the defendant will be on remand until December 21st, when DCP Wade's sick leave is expected to end. A church in Jamaica is spearheading a project to shift youths away from crime through music. The Lighthouse Assembly's pastor, Rohan Edwards, has opened a music academy for youths of Spanish Town and surrounding areas.
Prompted by a need to take delinquent youth off the street, coupled with the desire to fill a shortage of musicians in churches, Pastor Rowan Edwards of the Lighthouse Assembly in Spanish Town, St. Catherine, has opened the Lighthouse Assembly Music Academy. He shares the importance of the institution.
A lot of our students in our schools are not academically inclined. So therefore, we know that if we get them to do music, they can be applicable and applicable anywhere in the world. This is a way of getting young men to come out of crime, to get out of gangs. We want them to learn music.
Present at the opening was gospel recording artist Jermaine Edwards, who says young people who equip themselves with the skills being offered will become more marketable.
Skills in this time, especially since COVID, is very, very important because it makes you hold a handle when you're multi-talented. You know, many people may have the gift and don't want to use it, and I believe that there is many rooms for others to use their gift and talents for sakes of, going in directions that you're not supposed to be going in, and it can be a positive move.
Though millions of dollars have been invested into the school, the courses are free to students who can learn to play an instrument, record music, take up skills in videography or audio engineering. Speaking to the shortage of musicians in churches, chairman of the Spanish Town Ministries Fraternal says these skills will add value to the various spaces these youth interact with.
The work that they learn here, they'll be able to take it back to their church. And though churches have moved online, it has been my experience that persons were eager to get back into the building. And so with the education that this institution will provide, they'll be able to upgrade themselves when they get back into the physical space.
Janelle Powell, CVM Live.
And now for the international news, the latest bulletin from the BBC World Service.
BBC News. Hello, this is Jerry Smith. The Social Democrat Olaf Scholz has been sworn in as the new Chancellor in Germany's lower house of parliament, the Bundestag. He's replacing Angela Merkel after 16 years in power. He'll lead a three-party coalition with the Greens and the Liberal Free Democrats. Jenny Hill, who's at the German parliament, says any radical changes in policy are unlikely.
Many people here believe that actually he was elected simply because in style, in politics, in manner, he very closely resembles Angela Merkel. He keeps his cards relatively close to his chest. He is not given to wild statements. This is not a man who is known for his charisma and his speech making. He's very cautious, very guarded, very moderate, I think. And in that respect, I think we can expect Germany not substantially to shift in terms particularly of its foreign policy.
A helicopter carrying the head of India's armed forces, General Bipin Rawat, and his wife, has crashed in the southern state of Tamil Nadu. There's been no word on his condition. The helicopter came down in a densely forested area of the Nilgiri Hills. The former head of the army, last year, General Rawat, was appointed as India's first head of the armed forces. Here's Rajini Vaidyanathan.
4 bodies have been recovered from the military helicopter crash site in the Nilgiris and shifted to a military hospital in Wellington. 3 injured persons have also been rescued and moved to hospital. He's a decorated 4-star general. He's overseen Indian military operations in an Indian-administered Kashmir and at the border with China, and is a figure who is very close to India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Soldiers in Myanmar have been accused of killing 6 men and 5 teenage boys from a village near the city of Mernua in retribution for bomb attacks on a military convoy. The area has seen strong resistance to the military junta that seized power earlier this year. Locals say an improvised device on a road used by the military detonated early, killing 2 men planting it. But 2 other men were detained and shot dead after a second device exploded. A court in Bangladesh has handed death sentences to 20 students for lynching a fellow student, Abra Fayed, 2 years ago in the capital Dhaka. 3 of the men are still at large. 5 more were sentenced to life imprisonment. Here's Charles Haviland.
The 21-year-old wrote a Facebook posting criticising the Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina for signing an accord that allowed India to take water from a river on the border. Within hours, he was taken from his room by a mob and tortured and bludgeoned for hours before dying. Sheikh Hasina vowed soon after the attack that the killers would receive the highest punishment. The defence team say they'll appeal for lack of due evidence. The party Youth League is notoriously thuggish, and there have been calls for it to be banned.
World News from the BBC. An Israeli woman has been stabbed and lightly wounded at the entrance to the highly tense neighbourhood of Sheikh Jarrah in East Jerusalem. Israeli police arrested a teenage girl suspected of carrying out the attack. The 26-year-old woman who was stabbed is reported to have been taking her children to school when she was attacked. The mayor of Tokyo has announced plans to extend a system for recognizing same-sex partnerships across the entire Japanese capital, a significant step in the country's legalization of same-sex unions. The framework, which is already in place in one major Tokyo district, would allow gay couples to register their relationships and enjoy the same privileges as married couples. Campaigners say their next move is to push for full same-sex marriages, bringing Japan in line with many other democracies. The Taliban's acting Deputy Education Minister has told the BBC girls will not be allowed to attend secondary school in Afghanistan until a new education policy has been approved. Abdul Hakim Hamad said he hoped new rules allowing girls to return could be approved before the start of the new school year in March. Sana Safi reports.
The acting Taliban Deputy Education Minister, Abdul Hakim Hamad, confirmed the ban on girls attending secondary schools, describing the current situation as a temporary delay. He said the government wanted to create a safe environment for girls to go to school, emphasizing the need for classes to be segregated between girls and boys, which is already common throughout Afghanistan.
A Russian rocket carrying a Japanese billionaire into space has blasted off from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Yusaku Maezawa, accompanied by his assistant, and the Russian cosmonaut Alexander Misurkin are travelling to the International Space Station. BBC News.
The news came to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories.
A COVID-19 PCR test is now mandatory for many routine activities, including travel and return-to-work purposes. At Eureka, our trained and experienced staff will ensure confidentiality while your test is conducted in a professional and timely manner, which results in just 48 hours. So the next time you require an efficient and hassle-free PCR COVID-19 test, call 624-8378, 608-8378, or 623-7233 to schedule your appointment. You can also ask about our house call testing service.
And now to end the news, here's a recap of the leads. The Guyana Elections Commission will possibly this Friday decide whether a Guyanese applicant or a Jamaican will become the next chief elections officer. Several health sector workers were charged with forging COVID vaccine cards. And in regional news, Barbados's Senate has approved legislation that removes vending as a criminal offense. And that's the end of the news.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio Newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.